Hi, I'm Scott Brown, Kaffner Director of Strategic Partnerships and Associate Agricultural and Applied Economics Extension Professor in the Division of Applied Social Sciences at the University of Missouri. I get the chance to host this Take One for Ag segment, and I feel like it's my first time hosting Saturday Night Live, so I appreciate the opportunity to do this. And for this Take One for Ag segment, joining me today is Dr. Teo Skevas, Assistant Professor of Agricultural and Applied Economics. Teo, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having this discussion, Scott.
Dairy policy has been a long-time focus of my career, and I'm interested in the research you conducted recently to examine how the income over feed cost margin is one economic indicator for the dairy industry and how well U.S. dairy policy has managed operating risk for the country's dairy producers with this margin in mind. To start today, can you explain the significance of the income over feed cost margin?
Yes, the income of feed cost margin represents the difference between milk receipts received and feed expenses incurred. The margin is important because it's what's used to first pay all other expenses, including those for labor, land, and other inputs, and then ultimately whatever is left for profit. Feed costs are an important measure to compare to income because feed is major expense for dairy farms. To explain it very simply, it converts feed and other inputs into milk. For individual farms, the income over feed cost margin can vary based on many factors, including where the farm sources its feed. Some farms buy feed and others grow their own.
Yeah, so in recent years, the U.S. has implemented dairy policy, both margin protection program and the dairy margin coverage program, that's meant to address this margin between milk and feed prices. Can you speak to what the policy has intended to do?
That's right, Scott. In 2014, the U.S. introduced the margin protection program. Under it, dairies would be eligible to receive payments if the national income over feed cost margin failed to meet a certain level for a given 2-month time period. The Dairy Margin Coverage Program that replaced the Margin Protection Program beginning in 2018 has taken a similar focus. It makes payments if the national income over feed cost margin fails to meet a certain established threshold. In my research, I studied how well the national income over feed cost margin reflected farm-level margins for a sample of almost 800 farms in Wisconsin from 2000 to 2017.
And when you look at those nearly 800 farms, what did your research find?
The analysis found a gap between the national and farm-level income over feed cost margins, but national and farm-level margins were somewhat positively related. Part of the analysis then focused on data from 2015 to 2017 because the margin protection program was in place at that time. From 2015 to 2017, year-over-year changes in the margin didn't mirror farm-level margin changes. What this indicates is that the margin protection program addressed some dairy operating margin risk, but it didn't completely eliminate such risk. The research also found a higher farm income over feed cost margin did provide downside risk protection for dairies.
Teo, that's a very interesting result. When we look at another component of your work, it assessed whether weak income over feed cost margins drive farms to exit the dairy business. Could you summarize what your study found in this area?
Sure. My study modeled dairy industry exit risk based on data that measure productivity declines and capital disinvestment. Using these two factors, I could identify farms that were in the process of exiting the sector. In doing so, I found that the income over feed cost margin didn't clearly affect whether the sample farm would exit, but high feed costs did affect the apparent likelihood to exit. Margin protection program payments also didn't have a notable effect on exit risk. The debt-to-asset ratio and subsidy payments received also affected the risk of a dairy exiting the business. Farms with a high debt-to-asset ratio and those that received a high level of government payments had less exit risk.
Thanks, Teo. I appreciate your sharing your research findings with us today. And I want to thank you out to our viewers for watching as well. To see all the great Take One for Ag episodes, you can go to our Division of Applied Social Sciences YouTube channel.